replay, we have our test running in CI for every pull request. And we're using an integration that anyone can use, but we're also using it, which will run test automatically our playwright tests, could be Cypress tests, and it'll leave comments when tests fail with links to replays that show why they fail. And so we had some flaky tests that we'd sort of seen it seemed like they were getting worse over the past week or two. And so a couple of us dug in. Here's a comment where I dug in and I looked at the recent few, like maybe 10 commits or so, and I looked at 4 tests that were failing across more than one of those commits and sort of tagged them as flaky. So, and I linked a couple of the recordings. So for instance, this breakpoint 07 test, I'm gonna go ahead and let it load up. What I noticed was we have sort of an integration here which shows the steps of the test, but I think that's actually not necessary to see why it fails. You can just play it. And if we were to play it, we'll see what's happening is that we're adding a log point to the source viewer, and then the test reloads the page and then verifies that the log point is saved. But what I noticed in this test and the other 2 that had failed is that after, if you look, DevTools tab is selected. After reload, the viewer is selected. And our test is stuck waiting for this locator that's the source viewer, but it's never going to show because it's not in the tab, in the selected tab. So I added a comment here. It's like, hey, this is failing because the wrong tab is selected. And that fix was pretty easy. Tracks back, I think.
Did you see that happening in a bunch of the replays as well?
There were a couple replays where we had patterns like this, where we were waiting for a thing that we hadn't explicitly tricked off. So here I like the fix in this case was to explicitly open that tab after reloading. We had another test, let's see. This one was failing because the elements panel never loaded. So that was a little trickier. For instance, I don't remember what this test was doing, but it was trying to verify content of elements. And if you look all the way to the end, the elements panel never loaded. And so I'd added a comment here saying like, hey, oh, sorry. I looked at what was going on and I saw an error in the panel saying document is unavailable. And so I added a comment saying like, hey, like this is kind of weird. We're hitting this global error handler and we're just ignoring the error and waiting for something to happen. And so the fix here ended up being a little, well, the cause of this, interestingly, was that we are at the end of the replay.
Yeah.
And at this point, the document no longer exists because the browser has, I guess, torn down that part of its internal state. So we're asking the protocol for the root document element, and the protocol is like, I can't do that. And we weren't handling that error. So the fix for this one was a 2-parter. It was, it might have been over here. It was to jump to a known point in time that was earlier when the document existed.
Sure.
That fixed the test. And then we also, in a separate commit, I added explicit handling for that case. That error code, I think, or maybe we haven't done that yet. We created a task for that, I think.
So if we try to fetch a document and it cannot be returned, we'll now show an error message in the elements panel saying, hey, the document's not available.
Yeah. Was there something else interesting? Yeah, so this one Logan fixed, and I don't remember.
Yeah.
I think the issue was similar, but I didn't fix this one, so I needed to double check. Yeah, so this one was because, okay, so we were executing this makes sense. So here we're evaluating an expression, and then we're getting an error from it. And so the issue is that the way that the console was evaluating and escaping expressions recently changed, such that we were previously auto-wrapping things in parens. So you could pass a function and it would wrap it. Whereas now it's not auto-wrapping parens unless you pass it like a naked like squiggly lines object, in which case we will wrap it, which is what Chrome does. But if you pass it a function, you actually need to wrap it in parens and like invoke it immediately with that syntax, which is what you should have been doing all along, but we were sort of our test wasn't. And so like that was like finding out exactly what happened was very easy because you could just dig in and look at what the expression was. Like if we were to go to
yeah, I'd love to see those.
render, then down here we've got this component here where we evaluate the content. And if we were to breakpoint here and we were to add, I don't know, terminal expression, and we'd look in the log points panel, we'd see like, wait, is that, am I logging the thing that I think I'm logging? Expression, oh, this is the wrong one. Okay, sorry, jump ahead one. Yeah, so we can see like this is just literally the string function blah, and like that that won't evaluate correctly. And the terminal won't give you anything meaningful. So the fix that Logan had to do was to wrap it.
We need that function to be an iffy, don't we?
Yeah, it's the fix. Yeah.
Nice.
Like having these. So like end-to-end tests are, I think probably everyone understands how they're useful. And having them run in CI, I think that like we don't need to sell that. But when they fail, it can be super frustrating. And so having these links to replays where you can dig in and watch them fail and look at the code and inspect it is super helpful, especially when you can like compare multiple recent runs